What is good, YouTube? Is Aaron back here at the channel? This is take two. We just started it, and then audio wasn't coming through. So yeah, here we are. We've got On the Bubble, episode 21. Logan is recovering from his unfortunate circumstance of food poisoning at Richmond, so he wasn't able to make it. Luckily, he got home safe, so get well soon, my friend. But yeah, this is just going to be 300th YCS recap with myself. Rehan's got a lot of thoughts on his first tournament experience post rule change. So yeah, we're going to hop right into it. How are you doing, my friend?
I'm doing good. Very happy to finally have played post rule change. Finally happy to get a YCS under my belt for this season. It's been a while. I've been like in semi-retirement for like the past 6 months. So having finally played an event post rule change, I finally understand where all the discourse is, why people keep bringing up like controversial topics, double losses, tournament structure, things like that. I feel enlightened.
Well, welcome to the interesting side of the conversation where you're not just third party viewing it all. So yeah, we're just gonna do we'll do some brief overview of Guadalajara or was it Guadalajara? It was right.
Yeah, it was
Guadalajara and
Guadalajara.
Dortmund. Just mainly like deck lists and maybe some storylines talking about like who topped. But I was very busy over the weekend and didn't get to follow it too closely. And then we'll hop into Richmond, do a bit of a breakdown of both of our tournament experiences and some of the stuff to come out of that one as well. So let's hop right into it. Let me make sure I have it correct. I do. Perfect. So this is Guadalajara. It was a top 32 event, 1,244 duelists, with Vanquishal taking it down. Vanquishal was actually in the finals of all three YCSs, which we'll probably talk a little bit more towards the end. But that was pretty unexpected, I think, at least from my perspective. It was Vanquishal versus Yummy. Unfortunately, Francisco Bobadilla, who we were hoping for to get his win, he got second in this one. So tragic when it comes to our award predictions, but he had a fantastic run. He was, I think, first after Swiss, and then was unfortunately not able to close it out. But otherwise, you see big names: Andres Torres and Luciano Jr. is a friend of Paolo's who I met in
Mhm.
Anaheim. He had a sick run with I think Draco Taylor. Otherwise, I saw James Markowitz, and there's unfortunately not too much information as you can see as I'm scrolling. Like only like 11 of the deck lists I think are publicly available: Vanquish, Yummy, Radiant, Malice, Draco Tail, a Despia, which was Andres Torres, who usually plays like some 50 to 60 card branded piles, and then a Mermail, which got top 16 impressively. Listed up, so maybe at some point we can review that. I know Aditya was really looking to make that deck work and wasn't able to, so he'll probably take some inspiration from that. Any brief thoughts from the initial look of Guadalajara? I'm not sure if you followed it closely.
Yeah, if you give me a pie chart with a Luber on it and you told me there's a Despia that topped a South American event, I think it's not difficult to predict who topped with it. It's actually very impressive though because I was following some of Andres Torres's commentary on social media, and this is actually his first event as well, like after a break. So he was actually returning back, and obviously he played something that he was familiar with, but now with the power of like the White Albaz.
Mm-hmm.
So this is actually one of the decks that I was thinking about bringing to Richmond. I think this deck has such a good matchup into Vanquish Soul and into Radiant Typhoon. The only downside was the fact that this deck is a bit poorly positioned into Dracotail, not
Mm-hmm.
only because of Flame, but because Sting hurts it a lot as well. And then oddly enough, Secretarion, with how easy it is to make in that deck, hurts this deck a lot as well. And this deck doesn't nearly have as many tools to get rid of a Secretarion as the actual Dracotail deck does. But in terms of like its meta relevance, this I'll probably comment on this later as well. But White Albaz in this deck is so much better than White Albaz in any other deck. Like obviously because it's made for this deck.
Mm-hmm.
And the same goes for Synchro Ecclesia. So like if you think that White Albaz is $100 card and it's worth its price, like you haven't seen how good it is in this deck. Because it's used to its full potential, as is Synchro Ecclesia. So I'm
Mm-hmm.
actually surprised that more people didn't bring this deck to the YCSs or did have like successful runs with it. But I think with Draw on the outskirts of the format, with Impulse kind of like falling out of favor except for Malice, I thought this deck was really nicely positioned. Unfortunately, I didn't bring it, but I'm really happy to see that it had success with Andres Torres.
Yeah. I'm played against two in the event. I luckily got Christy Log 0 times, so can't ask for much more when it comes to that. And I was playing Malice with some Bestials in the deck, which I drew, I think, one of the
Oh,
games, which was
I'm also
very
very
powerful.
happy to see that he's actually not Christia locking. I think that variant is so much weaker than what
He sides it, to be fair, but yeah.
he's hiding it. He's hiding it. But like I know people are maining it.
Yeah,
Because
I
Christian
think
Lock
most
is
are.
fine against like decks that like play purely breakers. So there are definitely decks in the format that play purely breakers, like Radiant Typhoon. So it's fine against that. But I think what Branded does as a whole already, I think is really difficult to break in terms of its resource loop, and is how wide the board gets. That I genuinely don't think you need the Chris Luck.
Yeah, I'd say similar like Radiant Typhoon, where like if that's it's one of those decks in Modern Yu-Gi-Oh. I think Draco Tail is a little bit similar, not as like transferable, but like the decks are just like if it survives the turn, like you just win because of how much resources you
Mhm.
accrue. Like you resolve Chrysaea, you get the draw of Mandate, like you negated 3 cards or whatever, and they have like 3 cards in your name, and you start your turn with 5. Like that's all you can really ask for. So yeah, this is a deck that we'll kind of see if it continues to improve or get worse over the course of time. Like I said, a Vanquishal is a big deck. This deck like annihilates like Mirror Jade is so oppressive against Vanquishal as someone who's been playing a deck for a while. So very interested to see how this continues on in the format. So that is the brief Guadalajara recap. As more information comes out in the future, we may be able to talk about it a little bit more. But unfortunately, as of right now, there's nothing crazy. Yeah, Vanquishal won. Don't think there's anything. Here we can briefly look over this. Francisco, I don't think he posted his list yet. If he did, maybe on Twitter.
I think he
Uh,
did. He was playing Fiendsmith Yummy, and
yeah, it was.
he's been on that deck for a while now.
Yes, it was. Yes, I remember seeing it. He mained 20 hand traps, including I think Gamma Delta, and no chummies, and just sided the chummies.
Hmm.
His deck can't like had a similar approach to mine, which we'll talk about later. Which is like I viewed Dawn Engine as very impactful. Like the 1-for-1 hand traps, I think were positioned well. So he went a little bit further than me. Like he didn't even main the Foo. He just like said side frame is good enough. Like that's his version of Impulse because he didn't get to play it in. Yeah, I mean obviously. So this is the Vanquishal deck that won. Chummies, Ashbell. I think Perulio is pretty abnormal to be in the main deck. But he's played triple
Yeah.
Long. Doesn't mean the trap. Force released. Only one Roy, but still plays 2 Lantern. This is something that I saw like a little bit of a trend over the course of the weekend. Like I
Hmm.
think most of the top 8 listed that, and I don't understand it at all.
I
I
think
guess
it's
you just need
because
more
Rosin
darks in the deck.
it just conflicts with Rosin, right? Like you rather your normal summon be Rosin, and then if you're able to get 2/5s in the field, you're always able to get Noroi in circulation anyways. So I think that was the reasoning that I've heard because it just directly conflicts with Rosin, and Rosin's just like the better normal summon.
Yeah, but why 2 Lantern then? Like for the time when you draw Noroi as your only summon, like that just seems
I think
funky.
2 Noroi, from what I've heard, is so that you can get case online, so that you can get your Jokel in rotation, and people have felt like that just plays better into Fuelos.
But what does that have to do with 2 Lantern? Like I don't understand why this card's a 2 of. They should just be a
I
1 of
have
if
no
you're
idea.
playing one Noroi.
I
I
have no
thought.
idea.
Yeah, that's one thing that makes the least sense. Like, you could maybe convince me that like a second element makes more sense than second lantern, right? Like, if you're playing one lantern or play one Roy, because then like that's just Jokel, and you'd rather have Jokel than lantern in this situation. So obviously
Fair
perform
enough.
well for him. That just like the first thought that came to my head is like I saw this trend of like less Noroys, but I sat next to Matthew McRae because we were both VIPs for most of the day, and I watched him look at a hand of lantern, Roz, and Madlove, and normal or Lantern. No, sorry, not Lantern. Noroi, Madlove, Rosin. And just normal summon Noroi. Like that's just what he. I think it was like he just like had through normal summon and just chose to do that. I was like, he just understands that Noroi is so much better when it resolves than anything
Mhm.
that the Vanquishal Engine can do. I don't remember if it was game one, if he played the trap anywhere, like, but that was just a decision point that I was like, wow, like that was like aggressive. Like obviously if you get hit, like I think he had like a lantern as well to extend, but like I was just like, wow, like he values Noroi that highly, and that's how I kind of perceived the Vanquishal deck was like Noroi was the best way to start your going first turn. And Vanquishal, those cards are a little bit more impactful going second. They're a little harder to remove from the field, but going first, like you definitely want Noroi to resolve. So other than that, nothing I think super spicy. To Ripper doesn't play the new
Mhm.
Ripper, the rank up guy. DeFi, Imperm, yep. All this seems pretty normal.
Pretty standard.
Um, Dortmund, to no one's surprise, we have Jordan Gallagher in top 8s. Congratulations to Diego Gonzarli. I'm sorry, I don't know Italian. And Danilo finished second place, so congrats to him. I think he's now like pseudo locked for points playoff in Europe. I think it's him, Jordan, and there's one more person who I'm forgetting, who all are like leaps and bounds. Like the top 3 are almost guaranteed. And then the last whatever 15 slots or 13 slots are all kind of up in the air. Um, Otherwise, Marco Parenti, name I recognize, and Connor Zhao is a disciple, so congrats to you, my friend. But yeah, we can do like overview. A lot of Draco talent, but it's top 64. This was just under 27, 2658 duelists. Show full. So 22
This
unaccounted for.
this
We've got. Sorry.
this top cut was a lot more what people expected as the
Mm-hmm.
format was initially getting started with Burst Protocol, where Dracotail would take up majority of the top cut followed by some segment of like VSK9 and Radiant Typhoon. I find that like the Richmond breakdown was a bit more of like atypical,
Yeah.
because of like how underperforming Dracotail was, at least in the top 32.
Mhm.
And it depends. Like the answer varies based on who you ask. Some people say, "Oh, because Dracotail is very heavily targeted," but I feel like regardless of if your deck is heavily targeted, if it's a perceived best deck of the format, it should be at least taking up at least 20-25% of the room, when it comes to top cut. But I think
Yeah.
Dortmund was very much in line to like what people expected. People just bringing Dracotail, Radiant Typhoon, Malice, and Vangersol. If you were to ask anybody, at the start of like the weekend for the 300th, I'm pretty sure they would give you this pie chart.
Yeah. I'm obviously we're missing 22 decks, but like we only
Mhm.
have what 30 or 40 42 deck lists, and a third of those are Draco Tail. So I assume this number goes
Yeah.
up a little bit, already close to like 20. So like you said, about a third of the top cut is Draco Tail, which is probably about what you'd expect. All these like one of decks, which you probably would. Moonlight being a 4 of, probably yeah. Striker, which was Josh Schmidt, who got top 16. Um, and then yeah, like Yummy Mitsu. Europe loves Mitsu. They have Malice. There were 5 of them in top 64. I think it's all like a pretty reasonable
Yeah.
expectation. Vanquish only had 2 in top 64 and 1 in the winner. So there's always the joke that I saw in a few different discords, like there's always God's chosen like Vanquish Soldier. Because this deck is just like you win some die rolls, you open an Arroy or two, and
You open
you're
a
just gonna
shifter.
yeah, you open a shifter once or twice. I think in the final, like I think the Dortmund final was like game 2 open was like Holy Sue Ash Madlove or something like that, or Border
Yeah.
like yeah, like obviously like the consistency of this deck is not as high as it used to be, but you only need one of them to win the event, right? So
Yep.
that is definitely something to take it. Like the deck's high rolls are some of the best in the game, and there's nothing that's changing that. Skim through this. Julius played Yummy Fiendsmith. He mains the assist Yummy, which is something I'm not used to. And he also is doing the Diabolese combo. I don't remember who mentioned that to me. Someone did at some point. I think maybe Logan, who was testing this.
Yeah.
Where you like force your opponent to set everything against Radiant Typhoon, and they're playing quick play spells, so kind of just like shuts off their deck. It's I think this deck's version of what's it, Invader of Chaos is like the card
Yeah.
that people are playing. Other than that, Josh Schmidt was on Striker, got top 16. Christopher Nielsen with Mitsu. There were a couple of Mitsus in top 16, very close to making it in. Samir on Mitsu, Vincenzo. Anyone else I recognize? Tom K played Draco Tail instead of Lunalight, which was something he had discussed on his channel, but ended up deciding against. Leonardo Sacchetti. Luca Furion, he played Medistus Draco Tail
Hmm.
branded. I think he played very similar to Pax List, if
Yeah.
you've seen that. And I think those are all the names that I personally recognize. So congrats to everyone that did it. Oh, I recognize Matthew. I think he French national champion or second place last year, something like that. And then Felix Pfeiffer on Rain Typhoon. So, oh Josh, yeah, okay, decent number of well-known names. And then yeah, any thoughts on this? Like you said, it's pretty generic, or not generic, but like an expected
Pretty
breakdown
standard.
of
Yeah.
everything so
Pretty
far.
expected.
Alrighty. So now we can get into the event that we both have way more understanding of. So this is YCS Richmond. Show everything. So looks like we have almost all of Top Cut broken down for us already, which is fantastic. So we have the winner, which is Yummy. It doesn't look like they're breaking down Yummy variants, and Radiant Typhoon. I assume so. Yummy or Radiant Typhoon variants are under the other deck than Radiant Typhoon themselves. So
Yeah.
Yummy is 6 of the 64. The 2 biggest representatives are Vanquishful and Draco Tail. I did not expect Vanquishful to turn out as much as it did. I'm not sure if it's like a North America thing, if this is like an actual, like the deck's just that good. But when I was testing that deck for this event, like I thought the Draco Tail matchup was actually pretty scary. Like the cards interact with you pretty well now, and your end board is still good, but like you're a little bit more fragile because obviously you have less Holy Sues, so like how are you gonna win going second? That was something I was concerned with. And people said the Rain Typhoon matchup was free. I didn't feel that way in testing. I didn't test it as much as some people. Like I gave up on it probably like a week or two out. But that was a matchup that was concerning. I think I saw Matthew McRae doing some interesting things where he played like not Forcers, he played the other one, the other rank up spell, so you could like play around MST and draw phase, which was really interesting. He had like some really cool kill lines with Werewolf with that, where like you attack and then just like have Werewolf with 3 materials in battle phase. So he was probably the most innovative that I saw with the deck. So I'm curious to see his list if he ends up hosting it. So yeah, other than that, we got Memento in top 4. That was Radiant Typhoon. Memento, I played him in like round 4 of Swiss, and he ended up making top 8. So congrats to him. He's been playing the deck for a very long time, from my understanding. So
Hmm.
there's that. Only 2 Draco Tail in top 8. I think we saw what 3 in, or it was 5 in Europe, right? 5 in Europe,
Yeah.
and it was like
5 in
2
Europe.
in Mexico, something like that. So Europe was definitely the, I would say, like when you said the expected one, like that's what you would like look at and be like, oh, it's probably gonna be whatever, three, four, up to five Draco Tail. This
Hmm.
one's only a quarter of it. And there was two Malice in top eight in the U.S., which I was almost one of them. I bubbled to a Malice, ironically. So there's guaranteed one in Top Cut. And the one person that stuck out at X3 was Malice, who was playing the Radiant Typhoon cards, which I thought was pretty interesting. So yeah, so give me your thoughts on this, Rana, after taking a glance.
So I will say, I think my impressions of the format are pretty in line with actually what this pie chart is. I know this is like, oh, okay, there's hindsight. Okay, we have the answers now. But like in testing, I was very underwhelmed by Dracotail, especially um, the standard Albaz variant without the Magician's cards. From the list that I've seen, by far the list that Pack and Nesh initially they literally introduced it. They put it out on YouTube. They said this is the best variant. They showed case combos for it, and that was by far the best variant. I think anybody that was not playing the Magician cards in their deck was just like throwing for no reason. I think that solved a big issue in Draco Tail that I saw from the games that I've played, which is the branded cards don't do anything without the Dracotail cards in circulation. And from your deck, you've lost four Dracotail names, so two Melulu, two Ketu, and initially people kind of downplayed like how important that was. And from like the run that I had at Richmond and in testing previously, I thought that was really relevant. Like
Hmm.
a lot of times people just wouldn't open Dracotail names, so the White Albaz engine kind of just didn't do anything. But conversely, if you open a Magistus Spenta, right, that not only increases your ceiling because it supplements your Dracotail engine, but it also gets you into Dracotail engine. And I think that fixed a lot of the issues that the Dracotail deck had. Another aspect of it was that by going into the Zero and Negate, you now insulate your board farther from hand traps that can be used on your trap cards. Because from the Radiant Typhoon side, for example, one thing you can do is if you have a way to dodge a spell for flame, and you have a way to negate the trap sting, then you just hold your hand traps and you can just deny them draws and take away a majority of the interruption, just play through the board. So that was like one approach that I was taking, for example, depending on the hand that I drew into Dracotail. But I think I was very just underwhelmed by a lot of the games that I played against Dracotail. At Richmond, I played against six Dracotail, and of those six, four of them I 2-0'd, one I won 2-1, and then one of them I day two I threw against, which was like a really nice guy in VIP. He beat me 1-2. I misplayed game three, unfortunately. But I think Dragotail was very, very overhyped in terms of what it was to offer, and the deck list that people were presenting. So, and then I know that we were talking earlier on about, Malice's position in the format. And I think both like yourself, Logan, and we really quickly realized like how relevant non-engine is this format. And I think a lot of other people realize that as well, right? If you look at Pack's list that he posted, he's playing Bell, Valor, Ash, Nib, cards like that, like single point interaction hand traps that over the past couple of months have kind of just fallen out of the favor from the game for cards like Fulos because people have kind of like overemphasized the power of some of these engines. But when it comes to decks like Radiant Typhoon, Draco Tail, even VS K9 to some extent, these decks are really susceptible to hand traps and they're not as consistent as to decks that we had in the past, like Ryziel or like Snake Eye Fiendsmith and things like that. My tournament run, I actually lost a lot of games where my opponent used a single Valor or Imperm, and I only had like one Eldom. I had one Eldom, play four non-engine, or like cards that I couldn't actually use to beat the single point of interaction. And I thought that people that were on these single point hand traps, I think, were having a lot of success both in testing and in Richmond as well. So a bit of a tangent, but like that was like kind of my perception of the format. I will say, similar to what you said about Dortmund, I was not expecting that much VSK9. I thought that deck was a bit inconsistent and that people wouldn't really opt to bring it, especially given its kind of matchup into Radiant Typhoon and Dracotail. I didn't think they were good matchups. Um, but two of my losses day one were to VSK9. And sometimes when they open Jokal plus another K9, you look at your hand, it'll still probably Droplet, Ash, Fallen, and Crocea, and you're like, I guess I lose this game
Yeah,
because Jokal's an insane card. So
yeah. So I wanted to shout out Sit and Toli, who I saw his list on Friday, and in hindsight, I like if I was more tested on the deck, I would have probably played something to it. I think he kind of opened my eyes to it. Like I hadn't really considered like he just played Draco Tail with Magicians with no branded. If I had to guess, Pack Sec is probably close to like the most optimal way to play it. But the the point that matters, I think, the most is the Magistus and the Draco Tail engines work very well together. The Brandon and the Draco Tail don't actually have as much synergy. So that is something that I will probably look at if I end up playing Draco Tail in the future. Is I definitely will make sure Spenta's in the deck.
Hmm.
And also like the inboard additions that Magistus adds to your deck is just so much more in line with what you're looking for. Brandon adds like whatever, a banish, like whatever, like the Brandon interactions. But Magistus ends on a spell, a card that protects your traps, like from Ashen Belt. It also like has, I think it adds more utility for 5 mana. Like obviously you have Chaos Star Source, but like having Iwas, which I think is a pretty neat interaction at a lot of points. The Magistus engine also adds a back row hate, so you can out die 5.
And Floodgate.
Yeah, and then you have the Synchro, which is just a fantastic floodgate. So it's a lot of utility in that engine, which I think makes it not mandatory, but I think it is probably the most optimal way to play Draco Tail. So that'll be the rant on that. This is Paxos on the screen right now. If you haven't seen it, he goes like a pretty in-depth deck profile. He posted earlier today. If you haven't checked it out, so would recommend that if you're interested in the deck. And the one thing I do really like that you pointed out was like his list was hand trap centric, which I think was the correct way to go about it. And he mained what looks like 12. Obviously has Fallens in the decks and then sides into whatever number more, 7 more plus Imperm. So this like the one thing that I kind of noticed was when I was deck building this is like you actually have a decent amount of space for non-engine if you choose to do so. Obviously you can play more Draco Tail names, but when you're playing the Spentas, which like bridge into it, like you maybe don't need to. So also he played 43, which is something I considered I wasn't and put enough time in this deck to actually get that far, but it makes sense in hindsight. I think this is the first place. This is Kamal's deck list, 41 cards. I played against Hani, who I assume was on something very similar to him. I think his may have been slightly different. I never saw Mandate. But this is like this deck looks really fun. I'm gonna definitely try it out at some point. Like I'll probably take it to the regional. This is just like whatever. I don't even know how you describe this deck. Like it's Radiant Typhoon, but like you just play
It's
Yummy
like
as well. Like
it's like
this is all.
advantage generation the deck.
Yes, it's Tribe's pile, I guess. Like,
Yes.
um, and you still have a fair amount of non-engine in the deck, right? Like you have 12 or 9 hand traps, you have droplets, you have call by, you have MST, and this is 41 cards. My generic issue with this deck was I didn't want to have a bunch of clunk, but it seems like they minimize it to a pretty reasonable extent. Like they're not playing Revolt. They do play a Croaky, but they side it. And they trimmed all the Radiant Typhoon cards, which that was like the one conclusion that I came to pretty quickly was Crusade is very nice, but it like that is like the one really restrictive part of the engine when it comes to like being able to bridge back and forth with everything. Like even once you make Mauser, you can still go into Yummy cards and you're not missing anything. You can still make Totem Bird. Like you have so much utility still. As even if you can make Varun first and then do whatever from there. This was like the one part, like the Varun mandate. Like I wasn't sure if it was worth it. Obviously, it was worth it based on how Kamal played.
Hmm.
But that was like the one thing that I wasn't 100% sure was necessary. And obviously, it ended up being very important. And Kamal just like did some absurd things that I saw on the stream, like
Yeah.
the surprise line in the finals where he's able to like try and get back into it. Obviously, Mario has Bell to cut it off, but he played so impressively well throughout that finals. This deck does not look easy to pilot at all. Yeah, big shout out to him. Win number 7. I think that puts him in first all time.
Tied with
That's
Jesse.
and that's his second this season. Like he won Anaheim earlier this year with Christian K9. He's just one of the best in the game. Nothing to say more. So
Not even
big
best
shout out
in
to you,
this game. He's like one of the best TCG players. He's like he's
Yeah,
dominating
he's
Pokemon as well whenever he
top 8
plays.
at a Pokemon regional. I think a year ago. I think had some success in One Piece for a little bit. Pretty much every game he touches, he's just successful at. He's got good.
I have a
enemies,
comment to
really
add.
good. Of course.
One of the cool things that you can see in the Richmond breakdown that the other regions actually didn't showcase is you'll notice there's like a weird absence of Radiant Typhoon, but at the same time, it's not absent. I think NA did something really cool where they used Radiant Typhoon rather than a standalone deck. They used it for all of its good cards as engines, right? So Radiant Typhoon, Yummy, Radiant Typhoon was in a Malice deck, and then Radiant Typhoon was in the Memento deck. And I thought it was really cool that how they took all of the good, like really good pieces of Radiant Typhoon, and they allowed it to like kind of integrate into their deck to allow for like more engine generation, along with the excess of like MST because MST is good in the format.
Yeah, I think that is good insights. Yeah, this is the guy that beat me. And after I played him, I was a little salty because game one I opened 0 hand traps, I opened 5 engine, and he's just like playing whatever full combo deck. And I'm like, I'm pretty sure his deck has like 6 non-engine in it, and I was pretty much correct. Like if you count Rain Typhoon cards non-engine, you could be generous, but what that in fairness to him, like the Rain Typhoon cards are somewhat non-engine, right? Like or at least their access to it. Um, obviously you would need to open MST to turn these into special summons, but like he's playing enough spells to where he can probably like if you open 2 Radiant Typhoon cards, like going second, it is a breaker to some extent. So I think the Radiant Typhoon cards being splashable was the best part about them. Because like you've acknowledged, and my biggest complaint, I'm not sure if you heard the rant that I went on the last podcast where I was like, this Radiant Typhoon deck just isn't consistent, and I don't understand how it is as successful as it is. And I think it did kind of show in like at least like the 2 top 64 decks or events. It was like what less than 10% of both. It was like 6, I think, in both situations. Like I said, I thought the engine was fantastic, but like the deck itself just struggled to get off the ground, and I didn't think Noble Knight Shieldbearer was a big enough reason to justify that adjustment or to like fix that problem. So obviously,
I
you
can
max
attest to
tanky,
that.
max Shieldbearer, you can, but now your deck's just like, okay, now I drew 3 Radiant Typhoon cards. What does that do? Obviously, you had the adjustment of Fiendsmith, which we'll go into a little bit, but there's ways you can make your engine better, but it's it's just like it's a deck that like wants a really specific combination of engine,
Yeah,
non-engine, whatever, and you play a bunch of cards that don't provide too much additional utility. Like you have whatever Mandate and the big chickens and whatever. So
yeah, it's
yeah,
it's
so
definitely it's definitely a deck that has really glaring flaws.
mm,
I was a big believer in the deck, so I took it. But I think the consistency issue is very much real and is how my tournament run ended for top eight.
mm.
It's just I just bricked into the oblivion rounds 8 and 9.
So this is Mario D'Amico's second place list. He's also on Wonder Roy, also on 2 Lantern. So I guess everyone knows something that I don't. This doesn't seem to make too much sense. The
I think it's also the
Emperors,
dark count, right? It also keeps the dark count high as well.
I suppose he's not playing any chaotic elements. Like I just assume that you always
Yeah,
want Joko going first. I don't know what I'm missing.
I think
But yeah,
that just makes Bell have extra value into your deck as well. Plus, it's not a monster, so then you're losing out on
yeah,
an
like
attribute.
I, but like Lantern, I don't. I guess like I just need to like hear people like talk about it. But like, how are we? It just seems crazy to me that we're including Imperm in our deck over like any other. I don't know. Obviously very successful. Like I am more just curious because like this is not where my end final list for the deck ended up looking, and there are 2 lists that look very different from mine, or quote unquote very different in terms of like their approach to the deck. I found success. I will say this one played Snow Devil, the other one played Force Release, and neither of them sided. I think the Force Release deck may have sided Snow Devil, but this one doesn't side Force Release at all. So
Mhm.
this deck has multiple different like little tweaks that you can make that and still find success. So I think that's good if you're interested in this deck. Like my friend that I traveled with, I told him to play the 3 Noroi build. He didn't do perform as well, and he was just like, I can't believe like all these 1 Noroi builds perform well. So it's nice to see that there's little bit of versatility in the way you build this deck. Um, and Mario did play the Kinkiri, which I thought was like a pretty important extra deck piece. In the deck now, they always do that one, like being able to guarantee you get back in rotation, not rely on Rock getting imperm, or yeah, if Rock gets imperm, whatever, you're cut off from it. So he did that, which I thought was a good decision. And then side deck just a bunch of hand traps, which I think makes a lot of sense. Nibiru was a card that I was like relatively high on, so it's nice to see that other people felt the same and performed with it. I think even Kamal sided some as well. So just
Mhm.
having that like extra backup, either going first or going second, I think is always very good. He also included this in Maya, which I thought was a fun tech that he made space for, so that's neat. We did that. This is the top 8 Lunala list, so we're going to skim over this. Shummies, no breakers actually, Imperm and Impulse. And he maxed out on Masquerade and Tenki, the list that won one of the online tournaments, I think a week or 2 ago, by like one of the best Lunala players on the interwebs. Maxed out on Fractal, and I think only played like 1 or 2 of each
Yeah,
of these. So this is a
I
very
agree with
different
maxing
approach.
out Fractal. I think
Yeah.
like Tenki and Masquerade. Like when I was trying this deck, I tried Tenki and Masquerade at 3. Then I whittled it down to like 1 and 1 or like 2 and 1, some sort of combination like that. The
Mm.
biggest issue is that MST is in the format. And then you have
Yeah.
many engines like playing Radiant Typhoon as like an engine, and so they have access to MST. And then you also can't dodge your continuous spells, when Flame targets it. So I
Mm.
think is having these as one of your starters is so problematic. And so I think people that played either multiple fractals or the Brand Fusion package or Foolish Bill of Goods, I think that was much better. But obviously, this player got into top eight. But I don't know. I just think having continuous spells as your starter is just so flawed right now.
Yeah, I guess like so. The one other point that I'll make in addition to that is if you were going to play the continuous spells as your starters, I think playing more like of the one for one hand traps that actually negate the cards that would search MST would be my approach. But he took the approach of Chummies and Ash, and I think it's a little bit conflicting because like his deck doesn't play like the breakers, right? So like how much engine does Lunalight really want in hand, to be successful? Like I think like at a certain point you just get like redundant in terms of everything. So this is not how I would approach the deck. Obviously he was able to have success with it, so I'm not like if you are going to look at the deck, those would be my recommendations. I'm not a Lunalight expert by any means, so please put your own testing in. But those are just like my initial thoughts. Again, like the hand traps I thought were a good approach, but I didn't view Chummies as like the part of the hand traps that were super necessary. Like I really wanted to draw into whatever Ash Impulse, Veiler Bell, or Imperm, like whatever. Um, yeah, the Denko in the side deck, love to see it. That card is really funny. This deck that it's I guess like the argument for whatever Masquerade and Tenki is like this. The Denko works with it as well, so that's nice. Pankratops, I assume to check like DeFi and whatever else. And then yeah, Mistaken Arrest and Rivalry Goes in which I think I considered a Malice for like a little bit. I wasn't sure I match like the issue is like Rivalry is not bad against Radiant Typhoon, but they play MST. Um, and then Gozen's probably like not bad against Draco Tail with how the decks are playing. Like if you play against Magistus branded Tail, like I'm pretty sure Gozen may just like destroy them.
Yeah.
So there's probably some utility in both of those for matchups. I wasn't sure if they were worth the side decks or not. So obviously they paid off for him. So yeah, congrats to you, who's that David. And yeah, I think yeah. So I guess we can hop into my deck list at this point and have this, or we'll let you do your little discussion, and then or how would you like to do this? I'll let you.
I think you can start. You were closer
All
to
right,
top eight than I was, so perhaps we work our way from top to bottom.
sounds fair. Alrighty, so this was my Malice deck. I did deck profile on my channel if you want to watch it. It's a little more in depth. Um, I decided like probably a week out. I was like, okay, I want to play a non-engine deck. Up to like 3 or 4 days before the event, I was testing. I think I had like 4 or 5 decks that I was like, I could play any of these. Like, I considered the Magistus Draco Tail deck. I considered Vanquish Soul because that's a deck I have a lot of experience with. I don't remember everything else. There was a Mitsu deck that I wanted to play. It's Mitsu Drytron, which seems really fun. I'm definitely taking that to a regional. If I had another week, I would have taken it. So thank God I didn't because I probably would not have been as well as I did. Um, but yeah, I just like had the identification like okay, like 1 for 1 hand trap just seemed like fantastic right now against like Radiant Typhoon, against Vanquish Soul. Like when you don't open Holy Sue, like the normal summon Roy and whatever combination of like awkward cards, just like they're gonna struggle to get off the ground if you just hand trap them early. So same for Draco Tail, Brandon, where there's less get to, so like you're not open 5 mana less, and you get to play Impulse, so you have like 6 cards that cut off the spells, and if you negate Lucaeus or Albaz or whatever, then you're gonna be in a pretty solid position. So that was how I went about this choice. I was like, okay, I just want hand traps, and Malice was unfortunately the best deck. So shout out to Rehan for telling me that because I was like, all right, what's the non-engine deck that I can play? I'm like, I wanted to play a Dominus, and he's like Malice. I'm like, is there anything but Malice? I was like, the Yummy. I looked at some other stuff, and all the other decks were just like not good enough. So I was like, okay, guess we're playing this. Shout out Centoy for trying to get me to play Fire King for a little bit. We ended up scratching that very quickly, thank God. So yeah, this is just like I'd say like your most average Malice list of all time. Like I don't think there's anything special in here. I made deck building decisions like up until whatever it was like 2 o'clock Eastern. So this is not my finest brew in terms of like cleanliness. It's 41 cards, and there's like 2 Veiler, 1 Bell, and whatever. I think the allures and like the engine count was very important. But this is like my first tournament with Malice since YCS Houston like a year ago. So I'm very out of practice with this deck. I never played it when Lancia was in the format because I viewed that card as just too detrimental for the deck to be consistently successful. So now that there's no Lancia, which was like the other big thing, I was like, okay, like whenever the Justice Hunters format came out, like I was preaching Mitsu Raizo, and this is not the exact same, but it's relatively similar. Where like these decks from whatever late 2024, early 2025 are still fantastic. They just when they get targeted, like when Joel's in the format, Mitsu's obviously worse, and when Lancing in the format, Malice is like unplayable or whatever, or is like struggles. So that is where I'm like, okay, I'm gonna deal with less Lancia. There's gonna be less Nib in the format, and we're just gonna hand trap everyone to death. And it ended up working out, obviously. If I could go back and maybe look at the Radiant Typhoon package somewhere between main and side, like I think that's like a neat little bridge that adds maybe some utility. And obviously, we saw the Radiant Typhoon card just add a lot of options to the decks that performed well. So that'd probably be something I'd look at if I was going to keep playing this deck, because I don't think this deck is the most consistent, and those cards add utility or hesitancy, which is nice. Allure generally got started out going second just because of whatever flame and just needing more hand traps in my deck. So that is the spiel. GWC I think is somewhat important. Also, Mouse in the Mirror. If you ever thought about cutting that, I did for like 5 seconds, and I was like, wait, that's bad. You actually kind of struggle to get Mouse cards banished. And Mouse in the Mirror is 2 banishes for Cryptor, which is really important. So yeah, there's that. GWC I think is important in the grind game. If you ever get cut off from like Red Ransom or whatever, like you want also like another trap to set off White Rabbit, because your game goes usually like your turn, their turn, and then like your next turn, like you are not guaranteed to kill them. So having that extra trap to like push for game and make sure you have resources is, I think, important. And then the other big selling point of this deck is DeFi and Mystic Interest, which are just probably the best going first cards at this point. They're down on the list of everything that's probably next in line to get hit. So that is all that. Yeah, more thoughts on the on my channel if you want to watch the actual profile. So, any questions, Rehan, or are we just gonna let you get into your spiel?
No, this is the most standard Malice deck of all time.
Whoa. Yeah, I didn't.
I'm happy. I'm happy you finally got to play this deck. It was only like what, a year and a half late, but I'm happy you finally got to touch Malice cards.
Well, I took this deck to Houston where I thought it was like reasonably well positioned. I don't remember exactly. It was like whatever Rice was in the format or whatever. And I was out. It was my worst YCS performance in like 5 years. I was out by like round 5. I just like passed Infinite. Like I'm never touching this deck again, which is why I didn't want to take it to this event. But like I'm just like, okay, I can't just like be too stubborn to not take what I deem to be one of the best positioned decks in terms of non-engine. So it ended up working out. My technical play was not perfect over the course of the event, but I'm in general pretty happy with how I played. I played 2 mirrors, which was like the one thing I was really actively hoping to avoid. Like I just didn't want to play any mirrors because I don't know what the hell I'm doing. That's what I lost from the bubble. Like I probably did not play perfectly, but to me, my mistakes weren't blatantly obvious. But usually, I can pretty quickly identify like, oh, that was a mess up. I just drew like Valor Imperm against the mirror, and he had gas going second. Like he had like Bistulus plus an aim, and I'm like, okay, whatever. Yeah. And then game 2 is same thing where I had like 3 targeted negates plus like an impulse, and he opened just like Wizard plus March Hare or like Gold Sword plus stuff. So again, I probably cost myself the top, but like I can't obviously be like, oh, that was a mistake, or oh, I should have prepped for the mirror more in my deck building, because that was not like the whole point of this deck was like I'm not expecting the mirror. It's going to be targeting the other decks in the format. So unfortunate, but yeah, it was a good run nonetheless. Can't complain too much. I was hoping my tiebreaker of VIP plus 2 top 8s was enough, but can't get lucky in that regard. Just gotta play better. Alrighty, sir. Take it away. We'll talk about deck lists and we'll get into format stuff right after.
Sure. So one thing I actually want to add is, especially for you, I don't think you played many games with Malice. Like I think your list was largely just theory. And one of the things I really took away and like was really happy for was a lot of the people that I theoried for with this event, whether it be yourself, Logan, Santoli, some of the people that I theoried Radiant Typhoon with. I'm really happy that the game is in a position where theory and technical play really matter, because a lot of the theories when it comes to like, non-engine single point interruption hand traps are really important. What decks are positioned, what sub engines are positioned well, and I'm really happy that those theories are coming to fruition and success, and experiencing that. Even if it's not at the highest point of the limelight, like for myself at least. I guess, and this is just a segue into my list. I wanted to play Radiant Typhoon. I really dislike branded cards. I think branded is for anybody that has theory with me and talking to me about the format.
Don't you dare say that.
I think Drigatila is just such a subpar deck, and I'm really happy. This is like prime hater comment, but I'm really happy to see that deck didn't win. I just think that deck is just so flawed, and one of the most flawed best decks that we've had in the format. Where it's really good at what it does, right? It can do a lot with very few cards, but the best cards in the deck are the Dracotail cards. And as soon as this deck has now become like kind of like a hybrid of like different fusion sub engines, I think it's kind of taken away from what Dracotail was and what Dracotail really thrived at, which was kind of low to the ground, controlling the game, hand trap generation, things like that. And ever since it's become this kind of like monster fusion swap, I think it's kind of really taken away from what Dracotail was. And I think its poor showing in Richmond, it kind of shows that, where like it's very, very exploitable in terms of, oh, if you Ash Rahu, sometimes like that deck just folds. Um, Obviously, it's probably dependent as well, but I think that deck was very exploitable. So, which is why I ultimately ended up on Radiant Typhoon. One, it's new toy syndrome. I thought those cards were really fun to play with. Um, Two, I actually never have taken a control deck to a premier event. All of my success in this game has been with degenerate combo decks like Yubel, 60 card adventure Dragon Link, Hand Loop, Super
Alistair
Heavy
Invoker would
Samurai.
disagree.
Um, Even that deck was kind of degenerate because I played like 3 Tikaboo, DPE, things like that. 60 card adventure Cybers, Eldritch Slop with DPE in the mix. These are all of like my premier tops. So it's the first time I actually took a control deck to a premier event, and it somehow happened to be the event where I know a lot of people actually had double losses. So that was one of my concerns going into this event is having not played under the new rules. I was kind of concerned about playing a control deck with like new time rules. But it actually didn't really come up. I think it came up in one game or one match, I think in day two, where my opponent was kind enough to recognize, the situation in terms of where the game was. Had we continued playing, the game was won, and we kind of like, went through our play lines afterwards, after the round was over. And I was winning the game, but I think it's really nice of my opponent to recognize that and, not force us into a double loss. So we'll get into that tangent in a bit. But what I really what I really saw in Radiant Typhoon was the flexibility that Dracotail had to, both build wide boards, but when you got chummied, be able to make a concise, narrow board with like substantial follow up as well. And so when I saw that a lot of people were playing chummies in the format, 6 chummies in the main, which is insane, and not playing actual hand traps, I thought this deck was really good. Which is also why I didn't opt to play Extrav, because I really, really valued the Fiendsmith engine. And the Fiendsmith Radiant Typhoon deck is actually the only one that got a top 8 in Dortmund as well. So I was really happy to see that the theory that I had for this deck was actually paying off. Actually, also, small shout out to Anthony Zhu. I reached out to Anthony about this deck a month or so ago and asked him what his thoughts were. And he said, the best way to play this deck was with the Fiendsmith engine. And at that time, I was trying the Extrav pile because I was like, Extrav, you need consistency, and this card is like, a 2-card combo deck. But the more I looked into Engraver, I saw how insane Caesar was. And I really wanted to have that card in my deck because sometimes decks like Vanquish Soul K9, Dracotail can really just power through with a lot of strong engine hands. But when you have Caesar, that can be protected from cards like Fallen and Virtuous and Droplets when you have Mandate at the back. I think that card alone was really important because now you have a game plan under Perilia where you can give your opponent 3 draws under Perilia but end on a Caesar plus the entirety of your Radiant Typhoon board. So when it comes to like trading for card advantage versus interruption, I think it kind of equalized out. So I was very happy when it comes to like that part of the theory. And in terms of like the non-engine, I thought Sheena was very overrated for this deck. I know a lot of people were talking about Sheena going into this event, how insane of a card it is. I think the biggest issue that Sheena had was its best matchup of the format, which was Yummy, was just nuked out and people were not playing Yummy in the format. I think when you're returning cards for VSK9, Radiant Typhoon, Dracotail, it doesn't feel as amazing as when you're returning all the Yummy cards back to hand when pushing into a board. The only time I cited this was in the mirror match. I played one mirror match. I played Cam, and I used the Sheena to return all the back row. But even then, it just wasn't enough to win that game out. But probably the best cards in my deck were actually just hand traps. Shifter, Purge, Droll even. Droll I thought was really good in the mirror match, not for going second, but for being able to draw 6 cards and have a Droll to back up your board. It doesn't matter how much engine they have. You're always getting the pass back, and then that's, Radiant Typhoon can't compete with that. So the single point hand traps are probably the best cards in my deck. And yeah, I think that kind of just showed you where like the format's at. I tried this deck as like more of a hand trap deck, kind of like Malice, and it honestly just didn't perform. So I'm not quite sure if this is a deck that I'm going to continue playing because it definitely has its flaws. But it was very fun to play with, and I was happy to take it to Richmond.
Yeah, yeah. Like, I think it like you acknowledge like it has a pretty solid Dracoton matchup. It has like a decent Vanquishal matchup. I think it's like really thrives going second, but like
Mhm.
sometimes you just get choked out going first, and
I want to add, I won out of 15 rounds. I won 5 die rolls, and 4 of the from those die rolls, every time I went first, I lost my match. So I went 10-5, and I lost 4 matches going first. I think this deck was just so much better going second because you get that 6th card or you get a Fua. That is just, it feels so much better going second. I played against Mario D'Amico round 8, where I won the die roll. I went first. I drew 3 Fua, a Fallen, and a Super Poly, and I lost the game instantly because he's normal summon Rosin. Then I went second. I went first again, game 2, and I just drew 5 non-engine spell and traps. And I set 5, and I lost the game. Then round 9, game 1, I lost a die roll against VSK9, got high rolled into Oblivion, lost the game. Then game 2, I opened my 5-card hand, I brick, I set 2, hold my hand traps, and I lost the game again. So unfortunately, luck wasn't on my side. I definitely could have still topped with this deck, but day 2 I threw. But definitely this deck has its caveats, and I'm not sure if it's a deck I would recommend someone take to a YCS.
yeah. So the Malice deck I think on average will not struggle to win a time. The only matches of mine that got close to time were this and then my match against Hani. So 2 reading typhoons and then a try reading yummy. And we had like some extenuating circumstances where we had like a judge call that was like very loud next to us. Not loud, but just like intrusive. Like there were a lot of judges over and they were doing a lot of stuff. So definitely slowed down our pace of play a little bit, just trying to parse through what the heck was going on. So yeah, so that I think wraps up the actual deck discussion of the 300. Let's get into a bit of the format stuff and all the interesting thoughts that you may have now. So, well, take it away. What are your
Can you
initial
close the
thoughts on
door?
the time and the format structure now?
So I didn't think that time was that big of an issue. I actually didn't go into time at all with this deck. Um, I really enjoyed that people were playing very like much faster with their decks. They're a bit, a lot more like diligent when it comes to like okay, how long they're taking. People are, I think, my main perception is people were a lot more honest with their Yu-Gi-Oh. I've definitely had instances in the past, in the previous time rules, where people would just not make a play because they were heading towards another goal in terms of how to win that match. And that was definitely an issue that I had run into several times. But this time around, like you're going to lose. Like there's no way for you to win by stalling or like playing very slowly. And so people both played much faster, and people just conceded when they were genuinely in positions where they were going to lose. They genuinely just conceded, and I really appreciated that that honest Yu-Gi-Oh is being played for the most part. Definitely had some scenarios in which um, players were not playing honestly. But um, I really appreciated that because that kind of just elevated the entire tournament experience. Where people recognized they were in situations where they were going to lose anyways, and conceded the game. Whereas otherwise they kind of try to get 100 life point advantage with Kaina and win the game. So that was definitely something I really appreciated. What I didn't appreciate actually, and this is I don't know if appreciate is the right word, but by this restructure of the tournament run, it kind of took away the allure of some of the later rounds of a YCS. Um, and what I mean by that is previously, when you get to round 12, round 11, there's a bit of excitement when it comes to, okay, am I going to make top cut? Am I going to continue playing? And there's a larger majority of the room that is excited for that. So there's more viewership. Players are more invested in terms of, okay, will their friends make it? Who's going to make it? Top 32, top 64, etc. There is much more involvement and interest when it comes to participation for top cut because top cut when you're playing single elimination is just so much more exciting, right? Your breakers reset. You're in it every single game, every single match is like all or nothing now. But when you've now funneled this into just a top 8 elimination round or bracket, I think you've now excluded so many players in terms of like the investments where like, if you go X2, you might not make it. If you go X3, you might not make it. Obviously, that was always the case beforehand as well. But my main gripe with this is the issue of making this exclusive to only, a handful of players versus before many more players were able to be involved in the single elimination rounds and the hype and the excitement that came with them. So that was one thing. The other issue is, and I don't know how much of an issue this is, and maybe I'm speaking from a place of naivety, where I made day two, but I made day two X3. And I felt wrong in some instance to be playing for top cut prizing when I was X3 day one. And it really sounds ignorant the more I say it and hear myself think, but it really didn't, like, it wasn't fun playing knowing that there was a dead end, right? Knowing that, okay, I'm playing for maximum of a Veiler, I know that my tournament run is kind of just over, and after the end of Swiss, there's nothing for me to do. And in some ways, that was demoralizing because it just made every single match day two have less meaning, less emphasis. Um, but at the same time, it's like, okay, yeah, I get to like potentially still win a mat, a sleeve, a Veiler. So I don't know. I think it might vary based on like where you're at in terms of your player journey, what you're looking out for the game. It was definitely fun to be able to play more Yu-Gi-Oh overall, but at the same time, it was definitely demoralizing to know that you're basically just playing day two for the sake of like additional prizing. Um, yeah, so that's where my head was at. I asked a lot of players, that I met across the day two, notable players, pro players, players that I ran into as my opponents for the rounds, and largely the perception that I was getting at was players actually were appreciative of the fact that they were able to play for prizing, but at the same time, it was like a bittersweet moment where like they know there is nothing at the end of round 15 for them, and they're kind of just there potentially just wasting their time.
I get the sentiment. I think it's like pretty insane to say that. Like,
I know, I agree.
yeah, like before when you X2'd and like whatever went top 256 day one, now you got a like got a day two pack, but even if you got a day two pack, like before all of that, you just like didn't even show up because you were never topping the YCS, right? So it didn't matter. Um, because it was top 64, but like it was only like no X3s or like one X3 made it or
Yeah.
whatever. Um, so like the fact that now you have the opportunity to like if you finish day one X3 but like win out, you still get like a card trooper or a Veiler. Like I think that's a pretty nice consolation. When before you like were lucky to get a day two pack at all. And before you're just like out of tournament. So
Yeah.
I kind of get it. Like me and you were competitive. Like I showed up to I don't know if I showed up to Anaheim X3. I may have. But yeah, like obviously you're just like okay, I get my day two pack and I get to like leave whatever. But now you have the opportunity to play for more when you didn't. And
Yeah.
like the selling points of this structure for like the high seeded players is if you're X1 and you whatever finish first after Swiss in the 12 round event, you will like you could lose in top 64 and just be out, but like you have a 12-2 record and you're better than whatever half of the top cuts still there. So that's like the argument for it rewards the people that perform better in Swiss. So, and if you look at the actual math of it, like you have to have the same quote unquote record or like even better now. But like you can never have more than 3 losses and generally win a YCS in the first place. Obviously, there's some
Okay.
exceptions to that, but
So
that's
I have a question to ask with
yeah.
regards to that. So you were very much involved in this tournament until the end of its Swiss rounds. But
Yeah.
for example, for Anaheim, when you were X3, you knew you were unable to make top cut. Did you feel yourself more invested in the overall tournament with the new structure, or did you feel more invested in the top 32 bracket or top 64 bracket before the restructure?
Um, I think it just shifts when it happens. Like I just like I was under whatever like my normal level of stress the entirety of day two because I was 1 loss away from out of the tournament. But the same like it would have been the same thing if I win my 3 rounds of day two and then I'm in top 64. Like the same amount of pressure is on me the entire time. Um, so I don't think that's like a fantastic. Like my complaints with the game right now are more time related and like banless related than adding more prizing and making the game more accessible. Like if you make day two and before like you just didn't have anything to play for, and now like you have an argument to play for something, which is cool. And I think more Yu-Gi-Oh is better. Like there's a lot of selling points for it. Um, yeah, like cutting the tops. Like I'm kind of cool either way. Like I don't really have a strong preference, but like I don't feel like negatively about the adjustments, honestly,
Yeah,
because yeah, you keep going.
I wouldn't say it's a negative perception. I think this is definitely being picky. Definitely a first world
Yeah,
problem.
yeah, yeah,
I think
100%.
it's only from the perspective of like excitement for the game. I think I
Sure.
was like, for example, there's definitely been some top cuts where you look at top 32 and you're like, okay, there's so many amazing games that you are invested in, right? So many top players, top 16, and in a sense, yes, when you're looking at round 13, 14, it's the same equivalence as top 64, top
Yeah,
32 when players are playing against each other. So yes, but like it's very much just like a narrative perception
yeah,
where someone can go in, like you said, like highest seeded, they can win Swiss first place after Swiss, and they lose to the bottom seed, right? They lose person who's finished last. Like for example, Tripp's Anaheim story,
mhm,
right? He got in lowest seed, be the person who was first, and won out for winning Anaheim with his Rizal Fiend Smith deck. And I think one of the nicest like aspects of the game has always been some of the storylines that develop. And I think when you had that old style of like the top 32, top 64 bracket, and that was single elimination, you just had many more opportunities for storylines of those like to actually develop and but also gain viewership because viewing round 13, round 14 doesn't have the same excitement as viewing top 32, top 64 of Swiss. Oh, sorry,
mhm,
of elimination or top cut. I think when it comes to viewership, right, the head judge announcing it, this is entirely from just like a spectacle point of view.
yeah,
I think that
right.
just created so much more drama and hype for viewership than what we have right now. I get it. Essentially, it's the same thing, and this is entirely a mindset and frame
Yeah, yeah,
perspective,
100%. Yeah,
and requiring that shift. But this being my first event, I felt that contrast really hard
yeah,
because, like my group, we left as soon as round 15 was over. So yes, I watched top eight, top four, and the finals, on my phone. But I remember like how excited it was sometimes to watch top 64, top 32, and see the players that were able to like make it in, because for a lot of players also playing on the bubble like round 11, round 12 previously, and now like newly round 14, round 50 is really stressful. I think for a lot of players I've asked, playing in Top Cut is so much more relaxing than playing those later rounds where you don't know if you're going to make it into the elimination rounds or not. So again, entirely my perspective, anecdotal, first event of the season, but that was my first impressions. The other comment I want to add is knowing you're going to play 15 rounds mentally is grueling. Like when you're sitting down round one and they announce, oh, we're going to be playing 15 rounds of Swiss. Mentally, this is again just entirely frame mind, but like mentally, that just seems so daunting to know, oh, there's no top cut consideration. I need to first go through 15 rounds of Swiss, nine on day one, then come back and play six more rounds. I think that also changes kind of like the YCS mentality, where it feels very much akin to like what the UDSs were back in the day,
mhm,
and they were like a marathon rather than like a short sprint. Um, so those are my initial perceptions of this new change, having finally played in the format. I definitely enjoyed being able to play more Yu-Gi-Oh! 15 rounds of Yu-Gi-Oh! Definitely was fun, especially when I was at X3 and I was like, oh, okay, I'm just going to play more Yu-Gi-Oh! For funsies, for free. But those were my initial perceptions. I might get flamed in the comments, but it is what it is.
finally more comments. Yeah, leave a comment. Let Rehan know how dumb he is. So yeah, like my biggest gripes, or not gripes, but like I don't know. Why did I space? Oh my gosh, whatever. Or so top cut. Oh, I think it's just like a mindset thing, like you said. Like that's the biggest. Like this is most comparable to Pokemon, and they've been doing this structure for I think a very long time.
Hmm.
And Yu-Gi-Oh has been just not that. I don't really understand why they made this shift. You get to have untimed top cut now, which I think is neat. I
Yeah.
think that's something even Pokemon doesn't do. Like I think their top cut is still timed, when ours is not. So that's like one thing we have over them in that regard. Um, but in terms of like the tournament structure, like think it's pretty comparable. Like the way that they ran top 64 back then was like somewhat more additional time based on the round. Like I think top 16 an extra like 5 or 10 minutes or whatever. So, and now you're just like running the tournament with more people. There's an extra whatever
Yeah.
150 people still playing. So it's just a mindset thing. Like if they had let like I honestly I'm pretty indifferent on the whole thing. Like I think I kind of liked the way that it is now. Like obviously it was more stressful and more frustrating when I go 14 or whatever 11-2 and then or 12-2 and lose. But like that's the same as me losing in top 16. So I think in the grand scheme of things it doesn't change too much.
Yeah.
Yeah, my primary complaint with Yu-Gi-Oh right now is just double losses. Like I think that is something that is a legitimate problem, and I don't know how to fix it. Like the points that you brought up, I thought were really good. Where it does increase honest Yu-Gi-Oh. Like people are generally more likely to scoop, um, and people are like pretty prompt with their play now. Like I think that's a good change. But I hate with all like it ruins tournaments for me. Is
Yeah.
we are at the end of a game and one of us is forced to give the other person to win if you don't want a double loss, and double lossing it negatively impacts your tiebreakers,
Breakers.
like noticeably, um and like the fact that you have to be forced, and obviously it's good sportsmanship, like it just sucks that you're in that position where like, oh, like I have whatever a 10-15% chance of winning, maybe I'm lost completely, but like you still want to play out the game because like maybe your opponent makes a mistake,
Yeah.
but you're just like, okay, like we don't get to play the game out at all and the game's over, like okay. And they're just like somewhat ambiguous spots too. Like the reason why I didn't scoop in my spot was like I thought I had a chance to win still. In hindsight, I definitely should have scooped. I was emotional and like I should have given the guy the win. But like it's just like a spot where like okay, like I'm in the heat of the moment and I'm like okay, maybe I'm live, but like you look up, there's 5 seconds and like okay, like I can't scoop. Okay, time's called. I can't even fix it. Like I don't know how to remedy it, but it is legitimately like my least favorite change I think Konami has ever made. Like even with the like the burn time rule or whatever, like the life thing, it affected some strategies like malice. But I think on average, if you ignore the pace of play thing where people slow played to like kind of win based on time, the person who was winning the match generally won. Like if you scoop game 2 because you're behind and choose to go first game 3 with a time card, you were already favored to win that game 3 in the first place. And also you sacrifice some amount of EV when you scoop game 2 when you're still playing it out. So I think the pace of play thing is substantially better in these current rules, but like the whole double loss thing I think is just egregious and like it's so frustrating to have to deal with.
I think one of the biggest gripes that I actually have with the double loss system is judges hovered over you as soon as you were inching towards time. And that made it so difficult to navigate. This is not saying that there's collusion that's happening, but I think what judges should allow, or like what Konami should allow, is even if time is called, like it doesn't like you should still be able to decide a winner in some capacity. As soon as time is called, I feel like double losses, just being okay, time is called, you need sign the slip, it's a double loss. I think that's a bit egregious. Um,
I
Players
understand why it has to be
intentionally,
that way to be fair, because if you
I see
if
it.
you don't like, so if Konami did not say that, it is very likely that the match gets called and there's not a judge standing over you, and then two people have a conversation about how they want the match to look. Um, like I think, yeah, I can't go further in this conversation online, but I think that is, I understand why it has to be the way it is. I wish it was different. Like I wish the entire structure
Yeah,
was different because this is probably the best way to do double losses. But I think double losses as a whole are just inherently flawed and ruin
yeah.
some really good games of Yu-Gi-Oh.
I think they just also put players in such an awkward position as well, where,
Yeah,
you know, you want to be a nice person, but at the same time, like sometimes, it is like you said, it is vague in terms of like where you are at
you're
in
also
terms of a
competitive and you want to win.
situation. Exactly, like and then players' emotions come in the way as well, and they sometimes just like it leaves the game in terms of like a bitter taste, right? Where someone
Yeah.
has to kind of like give up their ego and concede.
Hmm.
And I think especially for a game like Yu-Gi-Oh, where a lot of people's egos is everything, it makes
Yeah, we're not playing it
things
for the money,
really.
no, that's for sure.
We're not here for the prizing.
We're here for the air fryers.
So I think that is definitely one of the biggest issues. What I will say though is it was really nice not to have draws in the tournament. That was really nice.
I get it. Like I understand why draws are negative. I just truly despise double losses and what
Yeah.
is forced by the system. So I don't. At this point I don't have a great answer. Like I just in general, like these aren't problems that unless I'm like given money or like hey, we'll take your feedback if you fix it. Like I try not to like dwell on it because like me figuring out the perfect system that they're not going to implement is just going to make me mad. So I'm just like, okay, like, it is what it is, and I'm just going to play under the circumstances that I'm given. So I don't have like a
Yeah.
fantastic answer at this point. I wish it was different. I hope it improves or adjusts at some point, but that's my current thoughts on it. Yeah. Alrighty. Yeah, I think that's pretty much all of it. Any final thoughts you
Yeah.
had? Is okay.
I do have final thoughts.
Okay, please.
One of my favorite aspects of the YCS this weekend was how many people came up and said they appreciated the podcast, appreciated like what we've put out. Not even the podcast, like on your channel, on Logan's channel. Like we've been doing this for I think almost a year now, I think, or maybe like no less than a year.
Like 6
Definitely
months,
less than a
maybe
year.
7, 8
Yeah,
if you're generous.
yeah, okay, yeah, yeah. I started after that.
It's like July, I think.
Yeah. So I think yeah, we've been doing this for like half a year, but it was really nice to like see that people actually listen to the slop that we dish out over here. And I think like personally for me, I really appreciated everyone that's had good things to say about the podcast. That tuned into the podcast. Honestly, we just do it because we like love talking about the game. But the fact that people comment, you listen, and you give the feedback that you do and appreciate it. Honestly, that was my favorite part of the YCS. I genuinely didn't care about anything else. Like it was a blast playing with people. Some people said they knew what I was playing. They knew I was on Radiant Typhoon because of this. So I know that in the future this is gonna backfire. But like honestly, it's been like a blast to do this with you, and I'm really happy that people actually enjoyed the on the bubble.
Great, yeah, it's a lot of fun. I've had people talk. It's like this is your first event in a while, so they all had to like come up to you. But I've had the experience over the past few events, which is very, very, very nice, very blessing. Like, thanks for hanging out. I'm sorry if the audio is somehow shit again. Like I've been trying to fix it. I don't know what I'm doing. So, unfortunately, that's something that I may just pay someone to figure out at this point. So yeah, that is all of that. I think. Yeah.
Yeah.
Hopefully next time one of us wins the events. Oh, but I was gonna say the one way that you can counteract people knowing what you're playing is being indecisive. That's what I do. It works wonders. Sometimes I have success. Generally, I don't. But no one will ever know what I'm playing because I don't know what I'm playing. So
Yeah,
that's how
fair
you
enough.
counter everyone.
Fair enough.
Alrighty. Thank you for joining. That was On the Bubble episode 21. Like, comment, subscribe, do all the fun YouTube stuff, and we'll see you in the next one. Thanks for watching.